Time for an update about the company, Conqueror Creations. Last I talked about it, I've completed the Saloon Core rulebook, and there's a free PDF of an early test version of it on our website. I got halfway through the new album field guide, which is essentially an equivalent of a monster manual or bestiary, before I accidentally deleted the file. That still stings, and I've not done a lot to restart that book, unfortunately. I actually found an illustrator and even announced that before, but in that time, I think about 5 or 6 months, she unfortunately had to drop the project. Why? I won't go into that. It's her business, I'll admit. I don't agree with the reasoning, but I understand it at least. So, the Saloon project has gone from Step 4 back to Step 2, and the company went from Step 7 back to Step 3. Obviously, those numbers are kind of bullshit, but the idea is there. So, what are we doing at this point? Well, let's get into that. I refuse to give up. I am not one to give up at all, though admittedly it's partially because of the sunk cost fallacy. I've put a lot of money into the company, and I will sink so much more if needed. I want to go into a few things that we're working on, and give some suggestions if you want to make your own business. First thing, advice. Make sure your product is completed before you fill out the stupid federal paperwork to officialize your company. This is my mistake, I'll admit. I should have waited, and this is what's costing me the most. Wait and get the actual product done first. I could have saved God knows how much by simply waiting until the book was done and we had illustrations finished. I recommend you wait as well. Unfortunately, the art is the hard part, but we'll get into that. So, if I could go back in time and change the order I did things, I think this would be the final step instead of one of my first steps. Please take this in mind should you decide to make your own company. Do indeed make a company. Should you feel you have a good idea, that is. But don't jump the gun and step on the trigger like I did. Right now, because of the illustrator dropping, I've decided I need to go to what I was hoping would be a later step, much earlier than I originally intended. I need to get contracts written in order to find an illustrator or illustrators, multiple, to start and complete the project. Most companies use multiple artists, but that's expensive for us. But getting this contract requires at least one lawyer who specializes in writing contracts and making sure all parties involved are happy with it. But they may need a lawyer too, if the specific field is not their knowledge branch. For example, copyright lawyers might be needed for contract lawyers, especially when looking to write and illustrate a book. Of course, there's always ways to get around illustrator situations, though through it, getting out of the contract lawyer too. Of course, the way to get around this, we refuse to utilize. The option to get around these requirements are AI artwork, using heavy air quotes around that statement there. I know the touchy legality of the subject, because AI can't create its own thing and needs to borrow from other existing, is it stealing and editing artwork? And does that break copyright laws? But if it does, the entire existence of memes does too. But if it does, that means that we really aren't utilizing inspiration. And if we don't create something totally new, we can create nothing legally. Then there's copyright laws if in fact AI can't own things, and the things they create can't be owned either. So we ain't gonna touch this subject with a 100-foot pole. As I've said in other videos, we had to decline people offering cheap work because we saw they were using AI programs to make their own artwork, quote unquote, or just straight up copying others' work and claiming it as their own. I've got a consultation with some lawyers to figure out the cost in order to do this stuff, which will cost out of my own pocket. I'll have to weigh out costs and figure out what the hell I'm doing with this. Hell, there's a lot of things I've done that I should have done some time ago. I want to point out something. Trademark and copyright laws are fucking ungodly complicated. I swear, those who deal with them are madmen by their own very nature, and need to be kept at arm's length with a suspicious eye. So, this is something I need to do. Find a madman to figure out these stupid laws and work with them. I also need to find a contract lawyer and figure out that shit. Of course, let's talk about the contract again. Illustrators are really expensive, and the cost of each illustrator can range from a few $100 to thousands of dollars. And this is an assumption that they want one price, but an illustrator always gets two options, which makes the contract very difficult. Now, if you know about the creation of Doom, you'll know that the very famous cover art is a very funny little story. The artist was given two options: $10,000 flat and up front, or a percentage of profits for the entire time that the company had control over the game. The artist to this day, says that he regrets taking the $10,000, but most will prefer the guaranteed cash rather than the slim chance of more money. I understand that money talks, and you've got to listen to it or else. I hope that we can find someone who will take the percentage offer. It'll mean that I won't need to pay the out-of-pocket, but as long as the book makes sales, the artist will be making money. Personally, I prefer that option, but like I said, most will want the money up front there, which, again, very understandable. But that money is a big issue there. Let's talk about that now. So far, we've got a cost of about $30 USD per book estimated. There's about $500 USD for the government paperwork, more or less. There's the advertisement as well. Do you know what the average YouTuber sponsorship costs? Well, given the majority work through companies, the company needs to make a profit as well. $3,000 US is the average price. Average, they do range in some cases. Advertisement is insanely expensive, and that's without an advertising company, which can cost a few $1,000s. The legal cost can range from a few $100s to $1,500 per lawyer, with maybe another 100 or so for the notary stuff. So my estimated cost is about $10,000 to $30,000, and how I'm going to get that cash is still up in the air. I want to do Kickstarter thing, but getting that is stupid difficult with how much cash is needed. So I might need to look into an investor firm. This would require me to essentially sell a portion of my company there to whatever firm gives me the capital. They'll then get whatever is agreed upon, percentage-wise, for the rest of my company or their company existing. Which, if things go well, will be forever. But to get investors to want to put money into the company, I'll need to get an estimated cost, estimated profit, public opinion, public research, market research, profit sharing, and so much more. I'll essentially need to speedrun an 8-year college degree within a short amount of time. Find all this information that is others have done, and pay for that. I can't get a small business or normal business loan from a bank because I do not have a business degree. But despite how business-minded I am, I could get a small business grant from the feds, but there's still some major issues with that. Mostly the time it takes to go through that process, which can be a month to 5 years. Seriously, that's a wide range. So, my best bet is the investors. And the best way to get investors is what the market is like. An option I would prefer is purely Kickstarter, but that won't be known without $10,000 in just advertising to people to check it out when we relaunch it. And even if people did start looking at it without an illustrator, who's going to pay attention to it? This has gone on long enough though, this video that is, and I honestly could keep going on, just complaining about how taxation is theft. But I need to get back to work on this stuff, so shove off.